Hey y'all, it's Toya and welcome back to the Academic Society. And today I have a question for you. The question is, if you have a PhD or if you're a grad student working on your PhD when you start teaching, do you require your students to call you doctor? Does it matter to you? Do you want them to call you by your first name? Do you want them to call you Mr. or Miss? How do you want your students to address you? And is being called doctor important? So I'm going to tell you my opinion for what I want for my students, but I also want you to share in the comments what you prefer and why you actually prefer it. So if you want to hear my thoughts on what I prefer my students to call me, stay tuned to this video. All right, so welcome to the Academic Society. As I said before, I'm Toyin, and this channel is just for academics, so it's all about academic lifestyle. So if you're a graduate student or if you are a new faculty member, this channel is just for you. And so today we're talking about, should your students call you doctor? Does it matter? And the reason why I brought this up is because I watch a TV show called The Resident. I don't know if you watch it. Let me know if you watch The Resident. It's so good. It's kind of like it's a medical drama, but it's different from Grey's Anatomy because it's about like the dark side of medicine and how greedy and how money hungry hospitals can be and the whole medical world, which I didn't know anything about. But anyway, I watched that show, and the antagonist of the show, Dr. Bell, he's pretty awful. He's the CEO of the hospital, and things are being overwhelming. There was an issue at the hospital. Everyone was asking for his attention. They're like, Dr. Bell, Dr. Bell, Dr. Bell, until this one lady was like, Mr. Bell, and asked her question. And he like immediately snapped out of it, looked at her and said, it's Dr. Bell. Think before you speak. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if one of my students called me Miss Ali and I was like, it's Dr. Ali. Think before you speak. I could never do that to my students. That's so mean and so embarrassing. But it made me think of this topic. Does it matter if your students call you doctor or not? And so I'll tell you my opinion. So for me, it's not necessarily a respect thing. It's more of a breaking down stereotypes kind of thing and like exposing students to new ideas kind of thing. For me, I have my PhD in math. I'm a woman and I'm a Black woman. So I'm a Black woman with her PhD in math. And I think if my students were not in my class, they would never be exposed to someone who is a Black woman with their PhD in math. I know I've only had one Black math professor, wasn't a woman, my whole life. Also in my department, I'm the only Black faculty member. So there's not many Black people in math, not many women in math. And so I just want to expose my students to say, oh, this is a thing. I had a math professor and she was a woman and she was Black and it was awesome. And so I also like to think that requiring my students to call me doctor kind of breaks down these stereotypes that professors or people with their PhD are men. Students really expect that many professors will just be men. And so I do want to break down that stereotype. So I have a story. It's my mom's story. She also has her PhD, but it's in business, I think management. And she had a student who would just call her Miss all the time. And she didn't really say anything until her student came to her office, called her Miss Crawford, blah, blah, blah. And then in the same sentence, she mentioned another professor and was like, Dr. So-and-so. And that was a male professor. And so my mom was like, oh, why did you call that person Dr. So-and-so but called me Miss Crawford? And the student was like, oh, I didn't even think about it. Like she just assumed that the male was the doctor and the woman was not, even though they both had their PhD. So I think that's interesting. So I think it's important for me as a Black woman to tell my students that I'm a doctor and have them call me that, just because they don't really expect kind of like subconsciously that they don't really realize that there are women doing this, because I think most professors, maybe in TV or movies, they're usually men. And so breaking down that stereotype. I also have another story, a very awesome story by my office mate, Bobby. He had a perception that doctors were women. And this is because when he was younger, he still loves Star Trek, but he watched Star Trek when he was younger, and the doctor on that show was a woman. And so he just assumed as a child that all doctors were women. And so he didn't realize until he was older, oh, that's actually not the case. But Bobby is actually a really great person. He is a feminist. He supports women. He respects women. He's awesome. And I think having my students call me doctor is kind of like, kind of building up some feminist beliefs in them. And I think that's awesome. And so that is the reason why I do get my students to call me Dr. Ali instead of Miss Ali, instead of Toyin. Also, I'm pretty young. It helps them realize, oh, this person is actually an authority figure in the classroom. So yeah, those are my thoughts. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you have your students call you? Why do you prefer them to address you in that way? And so if you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Also, if you like the channel, if you're an academic or an aspiring academic, definitely subscribe to this channel. And I'll be posting more videos every single week. Have a wonderful day. Bye.